You know, when you have that insatiable thirst for anything or junk food or any such thing, and then you find something that's actually substantial and that you can enjoy a couple of, bites of something, and you just feel like, wow, that was really good, and I'm cool now.
Welcome to the Lush Life podcast. I'm your drinking companion, Susan Schwartz, and I bring you the how-to guide for living life one cocktail at a time. Thanks to my mother's love of martinis, the first words I spoke were shaken, not stirred, and I've been obsessed by cocktails ever since. Together, we'll learn from bartenders, brand ambassadors, distillers, and others why certain drinks are popular in certain cultures, how to make the perfect old-fashioned, when to shake and when to stir, and so much more. Hear that sound? It's time to cozy up to the bar and let the fun begin. Our guest today invented the term hair clubbing, and now that I know it, it's the only way I want to get my hair done. Stroo Olofsson and his wife Julia created Blade Hair to be a different salon experience, and they got that right. Where else can you get an old-fashioned while having a cut and color? Why don't we start with how you got to London?
I got an offer I couldn't refuse. I actually spent quite a bit of time playing around the world, and a certain producer, who we shall not name, that happened to be a big influence and some of my big influences, was mixing some of my stuff and offered me a record deal.
So you were a musician?
Yeah. So dropped my old band. I was kind of fed up with the whole democracy aspect anyway, and just, said, what the hell, let's see what happens. So moved over here.
And where were you?
In Soho, straight right into the fire, so to speak, because I knew I would be working around studios in the area and stuff, and I'm a city boy, so it sounded good. I couldn't bear the thought of commuting like an hour back and forth. It's just not my thing. So anyways, we started doing that, and it was working fine for a while, and then it stopped working fine. So I ended up just working as an engineer in the Shulman studio, and that was fun and nice, but in the long run I got bored of it, so then just kind of went out, did my own thing for a while, and next thing you know, I needed a haircut. I walked into Julia's place down in Brewer Street, and about a year from that point in time, things started moving in quite unpredictable directions.
Okay, before you go in that direction, we have to go backwards a little. You said you're a city boy. Does that mean you were born in a city?
Yeah, I was born and grew up in Zagreb, Croatia. So, city, like a million people, whatever, but still, in comparison. So, child of the concrete, so to speak. That's kind of my thing.
What instrument did you play?
Well, natively speaking, I'm a guitarist and a frontman, sort of vocalist type. I wouldn't call my vocalizing singing exactly, but, good old rock and roll style stuff.
So how old were you when you started a band?
Oh, I don't even remember, like teens, early stuff, high school, that kind of thing.
And what were you playing? Like, what was your favorite stuff to play?
Well, we did our own thing, recorded an album in Canada and toured around the world, so it was interesting. Especially for a bunch of Croatian lads, because, we grew up with the TV, so the English wasn't a problem, and then we just, saw the world, and the world liked us, and...
Well, what was the band called?
It changed names often.
You'll leave
so
it
you
at
don't
that.
want to get in there. Some of it is quite embarrassing, but it seemed to have worked. But yeah, let's just say it was all in the past.
And where were you when you got the offer you couldn't refuse?
I was actually in New York City. I was doing some other stuff, recording. I was doing a documentary with a friend of mine, all kinds of different things. And the call came through, and I was like, right, okay, I'm in.
And so, can you discuss any of that?
As in,
like, what was the offer? And
it was just a 360 deal. It was a record deal, but he would be the person who set up everything for management, and he has his own record label that way to start. But the point was that he wanted to make a record with me, and set me up for the, kind of like the whole Hendrix story. You have someone who's big in local circles and, takes you under their wing and says, right, let's do this. But yeah, I'm quite a stubborn guy. It appears that he had a really strange idea about what I should be in terms of the musical persona and the genre. So he ended up trying to push me into some sort of white Marvin Gaye territory, which I wasn't really exactly comfortable with. So yeah, we just parted ways after a while. I mean, amicably. Everything was great. It just, we agreed to disagree.
All right, then you walked into Julie's shop. Was it here?
Yeah, I was just on Burr Street. I mean, my hair was down below my elbows kind of thing. I looked like a total metalhead at the time, and I realized it's not really what I want to project. So I'm just like, right, I need someone to cut this off now. And then I was just walking around, and it kind of felt quite intimidating, because you see all these places around Soho, and it's all kind of fancy schmancy. It's like, 3 people at a perfect looking reception staring you down, And the only place that looked reasonable, I just want to get in here, get this done, get out without, any fuss, was Julia's old place on Brewer Street called Splash. It still exists. And yeah, the rest is, as they say, history.
And what is that history? So you went in, you got your haircut, you thought this was great?
Yeah, I wasn't really focusing on the haircut that much, to be honest with you. So, the usual routine. I was cheeky enough.
I can't wait to hear what the usual routine is.
Well, you notice someone that really appeals to you, you start having a chat, and they say, hey, how about getting a cup of coffee or something? Next thing you know, we hit it off. I mean, and actually there was a pretty big gap between that. It was about a year, because she was engaged at the point in time. So I kept it very nice and clean. But I was just on the lookout. I checked up on her often.
You got your haircut a lot, so it went shorter and shorter.
Yeah. So like every couple of months I'd be, and plus I used to live in the neighborhood still. So next thing you know, we became an item. Mm-hmm. And then we started thinking. At that time, I was doing a lot of 3D movie editing because that was good money and kind of fun. And I needed a rest from the music industry anyway. I just wanted to set up a little place for a little lady. Just like, okay, I got my own thing, and let's see what you can do. So we said, okay, let's get a shop. And I figured, I'll be involved for a year, if, max. And then I'm just going to go back to my old tricks. Yeah, 5 years later.
5 years.
We're here now, 5.5, I think. But yeah, it was a big learning curve, owning your own business, because I used to do a lot of stuff based on my own, ability as a, sort of solo guy. So it's easy when you don't have to manage other people and work with things like, leases and, stuff like that. So it was sort of a growing up kind of thing. And then, we started this. First thing I said, look, this is, just generally speaking, hair salons are horrible. We need to do something about this because it's just boring and drab, and who wants to do that? So my first thought was, let's put iPads on the chairs. That seemed to go well. Then I said, why don't we get a coffee bar in there? Because, first thing anyone says when they come in, they're early, I'm just going to go and grab a cup of coffee. And I'm like, yeah, well, why don't we just make a coffee shop right inside? So we did that. I think actually that might have been Julia's idea though, so I might be taking that one. And next thing you know, we were starting doing jazz gigs and stuff, because again, I'm a musician, I'm bored, I'm thinking, well, how can we make this a little bit more interesting? And that was really hitting the spot.
Would you get jazz musicians who weren't playing, because it was during the day, right?
Yeah,
so you'd get them who...
We'd actually get like a, duo or trio just to chill and jam. And then we started thinking, well, it'd be cool if we could do some cocktails while the guys are playing. Maybe that could work. So we started doing those, using all kinds of legal arrangements, fully above board, I have to say. And that gave us the idea of trying to, continue in that direction. So then we came up to the point where now we have a full-fledged bar that I'm right behind. And that kind of started doing its own thing, and now we call it hair clubbing. And I think we're doing our little bit in changing the hairdressing culture towards something far more civilized and convivial.
Now, did you drink something specifically before you thought of this? Was there a cocktail you liked?
Well, actually, I mean, to be honest, my drinks education started during those early years when I would be so bored out of my mind because, it's like you just open the shop. It's not exactly, crazy busy. So I used to go and hang at Milroy's of Soho, which is up on Greek Street. And then in that iteration, it was just a booze shop. And they had like a little tasting basement set up. So I got friendly with the guys.
Simo?
Nope, that was before his time.
Oh, before Simo, because I've interviewed him for this very podcast.
I've literally just seen him up on the street in front of the vintage house.
Pre-Simo.
Pre-Simo. So the guys who were managing the shop kind of took me under their wing, and the shop would close at 7, conveniently. And then they just, show me around the wonderful world of whiskey, which sort of civilized me. It was another sort of growing up point, because that was the first time I realized I can actually enjoy an alcoholic beverage in a sort of, intellectual and emotional capacity, and, reap the, joy benefits of being merry. But it kind of was the first thing that sort of hit the spot, when you have that, insatiable thirst for anything, or junk food or any such thing, and then you find something that's actually substantial and that you can enjoy a couple of bites of something, and you just feel like, wow, that was really good and I'm cool now. That's what it did for me. And I really started observing my own perception of whiskey, and it kind of took me towards the whole idea of bar and booze, because before that I just didn't really pay attention. I mean,
what were you drinking when you were in the band?
Just everything and anything. Just a silly kid. Just put it on the bar and let's see how fast and how much of it we can do, as opposed to what is it. But partially that's also because you need someone to show you the good stuff. Because when I was a kid, it's like, right, this is called whiskey, right? Okay, let's see, what is it? It is a little thing called, I don't know, like Valentine's or Famous Grouse. And then you try it and, you get the shakes and you go like, right, okay, done, whiskey, tick the box, no longer, needed. And then you try something really good and you go, well, wait, you're telling me that that's whiskey? And they go, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then you go like, how? What? Who makes this stuff? How does it happen? What's the whole deal? What's this scotch? What's this bourbon thing? And then you dive in. The next thing you know, you're a full-fledged whiskey geek, which I probably am.
And so when you started the bar here, were you thinking it would be a whiskey bar or heavy on the whiskey?
Yeah, I was full on selfish at that point. As I said, this all came about really organically, so it wasn't... I mean, there was a business angle to it, but it was more like you just go where, you feel pulled towards in a way. So the first thing I was thinking is, just a really cool little whiskey bar. And then to my huge disappointment, there are other drinks that I may not like as much, but, the people do like. So that was kind of forcing me to get acquainted with the other stuff, like the beers and the cocktails and whatever, not wine and so on. So, yeah, I'm still learning. We all are,
Has anything captured your heart as much as whiskey?
No. I do enjoy making cocktails because I find that the idea of figuring out what works together is quite compatible with the perception of whiskey. It kind of goes along the same line. You're just looking for things that naturally fit. So you can detect very early on if something is conflicting and grating, or if it's really working out. So I think I'm still basically thinking whiskey as general sort of rule of thumb, but it is kind of like the same thing. You're just looking for a harmony.
And the first couple cocktails, did you create them yourself?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, first you go, okay, cocktails, because I was never big on them because they're usually too sweet for my taste. And, it's unfortunately, like 10 years back, I think, before this whole mixologist thing came up, it was more about a bad excuse to just chuck some pretty average or below average spirits with a lot of sugar and just sell it, on a marked up price and get you drunk faster. bubblegum alcohol, I call it. So when it started, kind of being obvious to me to learn, you just go and naturally, what's the first thing I do? An old-fashioned, because I can relate to that. And then it became really interesting because I started discovering different flavors and different stuff. And being a musician, I guess my imagination is quite out there. So I started combining certain things. So I think I've done maybe 10 signature cocktails so far. Some of them I don't really put on the menu because either I think they're a bit too far out there, or they could be just a little bit not there yet, so to speak. Like I'm working on something at this moment which involves beetroot juice and apple cider vinegar, because I just realized they really work well together in a sort of sweet and sour capacity. But I was annoyed because I've tried quite a few spirits and nothing worked other than vodka, which I consider to be really boring. So I'm still on the search for the really interesting, sort of curveball base spirit to use without a combo.
Do you get your regulars to try some of them out here?
Yeah, I mean, when I come up with something, I'll usually just go around and first of all, I'll just take, a glass upstairs and give it to all the stylists to just kind of like take a tiny sip and, because you're observing, is it a male, is it a female kind of robust, testosterone thing, or is it a gentle, sweet thing? So you're kind of trying to gauge reactions and such. But yeah, you have to test the waters. But funnily enough, I usually know exactly what I want, and if I like it, I like it. It's just a question of whether it's going to be, something that the general public will find acceptable or not too risky, because some of the stuff is quite out there. And then some of the stuff is really disappointingly apparently scary to the mainstream, right? So I have this thing, I call it the Devil's Blade, which is just a spiel on the Boulevardier. So I replace, in a Negroni you have your gin, you have your vermouth and Campari. So I replace the gin with rye, which makes the Boulevardier, but then I replace the vermouth with a Mexican red chili liqueur. And they really work beautifully together. And the chili liqueur is obviously 1/3 or even less of the whole concoction, and it is not spicy, by any, it's just like a tingle, but people are so afraid of it. And then you just go, okay, it's a shame. So you have to figure out which ones are mainstream friendly and which ones are like oddballs that people who may be looking for something a little bit more interesting and have the palate will appreciate, but you'll sell like a couple of them in a month instead of like espresso martinis, which is like, right, you just put them out on the production line and they just keep coming out. Not to say that it's bad, it's just I think people generally, fear is an element, and there are just, most people are not really interested in the unknown.
Well, I think they probably think I'm paying 10 quid for a drink or whatever it is at a bar. I want to make sure that I like this. Otherwise, there's 10 quid down the drain.
Yeah.
And, now I think the bars, at least in London, talk to you about what you like. So that you don't fall into too. That. Yeah.
I usually, because people will be like, I want this, I want that. I'm like, okay, well, what do you normally enjoy, or recommend something? And I have to start from somewhere. So I usually try the same thing, but we try to do a very detailed, and most, you'll see a list of ingredients in the cocktail to a certain extent. I try to be quite detailed. But then again, people are not into that, and some people don't know what a Calvados is. What's this Calva, thing? And then you have to kind of explain, and then I take the bottle off the shelf and, pour a little bit of it, give them a nose or something. But yeah.
And is this all while doing their hair?
Yeah, before, during, after, it all happens,
Thus hair clubbing. I'll come back to that, because
exactly.
I kind of stopped you there and made you go back. Yeah. So is that your idea of hair clubbing?
Well, we call hair clubbing this new thing, which is combining socializing and a bar venue with the whole chore of going around hairdressing. And the idea behind it is just to transform it into a social experience. So, and most, or pretty much the vast majority of places, you're not really incentivized to bring a friend. So that's the first thing we're trying to, correct, because I think it's much more fun if you bring in someone that you can still keep chatting to whilst you get your hair done. And if that someone and yourself can enjoy a nice beverage, whether be it alcoholic or not, it brings the whole thing onto a whole different level of, on the scale of, was this time well used? or wasn't it? Because normally it's just a chore, so we're trying to get away from that. And the hair clubbing is just something we were struggling to find a word for it, because it's difficult to explain new categories to people. So we found that hair clubbing sounded, although people don't get it, when they hear it the first time, hopefully they will at some point, because it may become a sort of a vernacular item. But it's about just something catchy and hair related that people will smile to and be like, oh really, yeah, I get it. Clubbing, okay, I get it. It's kind of, there's some fun element in there, and obviously if it's hair clubbing, like, what is it? And that's pretty much all you need. You just need to sort of open that door a little bit and put a foot in, and then when you explain it, it's like, oh yeah, I get it. Because if you say, oh, it's a bar salon, then it's like still weird. It needs something catchy. It needs something to fire up the old imagination. So far we find it works.
I think it sounds great, and I want to try one of your cocktails. Will you go up and make one for me?
Yeah, I think I might have to find a special recipe for you.
Thanks to Stroo for joining me on the show today. If you're ever in Soho, London, come by for a drink and stay for a cut. One of Stroo's iconic whiskey cocktails is our cocktail of the week. It's called The Name of the Rose, and you'll see why. Pour all the following ingredients directly into an old-fashioned tumbler. 50 ml of Four Roses single barrel bourbon, 25 ml of Luxardo maraschino, 3 dashes of Abbott's bitters, but Angostura will do fine in a pinch. Then place an oversized ice cube made from fresh brewed rosebud tea into the cocktail and swirl it as you would any whiskey. Then garnish with the dried rosebud. As the ice melts, the rose flavors will increase and enhance the cherry notes of the maraschino, as well as the floral notes of the bourbon. Just so you know, the cocktail is still absolutely lovely and super simple to make, even without the rosebud tea ice. This and all the recipes you hear on the podcast can be found at alushlifemanual.com, where you'll also find all the ingredients in our shop. Next time on Lush Life, we head up to the highest ski resort in Europe, Val Thorens. We meet Eunice Bahir at the Hotel Pashmina, whose cocktail creations are as cool as the weather outside. Until next time, bottoms up. Thanks for listening to the Lush Life podcast, the sister of A Lush Life Manual. For more information and links to everything you heard, plus a bit more, please visit alushlifemanual.com. Always remember the wise words of Oscar Wilde. All things in moderation, including moderation. And always drink responsibly. Okay, I said that last part. Theme music is by Steven Shapiro and used with permission. Lush Life is produced by Terra, and I'm your hostess, Susan Schwartz. I'll see you at the bar.